So in today's video we will have a look at the system specifications for the Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and we will see what they are and will your computer be able to run the flight sim well. Hello everyone, this is Am's Gaming Network and welcome to my first ever YouTube video. I'm going to be making videos on the new Flight Simulator 2020 and also videos on X-Plane and also maybe some truck simulation, bus simulation, that kind of thing. Please make sure you like this video, subscribe and click on the notification bell so that you are notified every time I make an upload. Let's get into the video. So a few weeks ago Microsoft released the specs for the flight sim. For some people who are wanting to get the flight sim may find this a little bit confusing and what does each column actually mean and how will it run. So there's three different options. There's minimum specs, recommended specs, ideal specs with an Intel and AMD variant. So the first one, minimum spec. So let's have a look at the minimum spec. The operating system required is Windows 10. As you can see, it says version 1909, but when I went to install the flight simulator, it required version 2004. This is also the same for all the other different specs. The CPU is an AMD Ryzen 3 1200 or an Intel Core i5 4th generation. These processors aren't great, but it will be able to run the flight sim at low settings. The graphics card is a Radeon RX 570 or an Nvidia GTX 770. Again, these aren't great graphics cards, but it'll be able to run the flight simulator at low levels. The VRAM or video RAM is 2GB. Again, not great, but you'll not be able to really run it with a lot of detail. The scenery will be flat with not a lot of buildings at all. And the RAM is 8GB. This isn't a lot of RAM for a gaming computer, but you aren't going to need a lot of RAM because you aren't going to be taking full advantage of the game anyway. The hard drive capacity needed is 150GB with a recommended internet speed of 5 megabits per second. So overall these specs aren't brilliant and won't give you the full advantage of the new flight simulator, and the actual gameplay of the flight simulator won't be anything like the videos we've saw on YouTube, etc. Let's move on to the recommended specs. So the CPU is a Ryzen 5 1500X on Intel i5 8400. These specs are all right for this processor and is what you would probably have for a mid-range gaming PC, I would say. The CPU will be able to run the flight sim probably about mid-seconds. The GPU is a Radeon RX 590 or an Nvidia GTX 970. These GPUs are obviously better than the minimum specs, but still don't have the functionality to have the level of detail like we've saw on the videos. The VRAM is 4GB, so more than the minimum specs. RAM is 16GB, again is what you would expect on a mid-range gaming PC. Hard drive capacity is once again 150GB. This is the same for all three, and a recommended internet speed is 20 megabits per second. Even with these specs, you're still not going to take full advantage of all the buildings and the detail of the flight sim, but it's still better than the minimum. So we'll move on to the ideal specs. CPU is a Ryzen 7 Pro 2700 or Intel i7 9800X. If you've got an i7 9th generation K series processor like myself, you'll still be able to run the flight sim completely fine. When I saw these specs, I was a bit concerned myself with having a K series processor, but after doing a bit of research, I figured it's going to run completely fine. The GPU is a Radeon 7 or an Nvidia RTX 2080. I've got the RTX 2080 Ti, and the graphics cards are really good, but they're very expensive, and not everyone's going to be able to get these. The VRAM is 8GB and the RAM is 32GB. So compare this to the minimum specs, this is a lot of RAM. Hard drive capacity is 150GB again, but here it actually says SSD, and that means solid state drive. So this will make load times of games way faster. Overall, it's just a much faster solution to the traditional hard drive. Most PCs now have them to store the Windows operating systems on, so most gaming PCs, they'll have a solid state drive or an M.2 solid state drive that hosts the Windows operating system. Then they'll have a hard drive to store all the games on, etc. And the recommended internet speed for this spec is 50 megabits per second. So if you were to have, let's say, 5 megabits per second, like on the minimum specs, but you had this computer specification, you wouldn't be able to take full advantage because the internet would be holding you back, so you need to make sure that you've got good internet connection. So to get the most out of the flight sim, these are the specs needed, but this is very expensive. Not everyone can go out and spend a load of money on a gaming computer, obviously. So if you are getting a new computer for the flight sim and you want to spend the least amount of money as possible, I would recommend going for the recommended specs. You know, it's good mid-range. It's not brilliant, but it's also not going to be rubbish. But if your budget can support the ideal spec, I would definitely recommend it. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you found this video useful. Please comment below on your PC specs. If you did enjoy, please like and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video.